mwongozo wa kiafya kutoka kwa kituo cha afya ili kujikinga na virusi vya korona. Pata habari kuhusu COVID-19 kupitia vyanzo vinavyoaminika. Piga 719 au bonyeza *719#. COVID-19 inazuilika. Jilinde, linda familia na jamii. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na serikali ya Kenya.
On Monday, the 6th of July 2020, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced a phased reopening of the country, and among the places that he ordered opened include places of worship under strict rules, and some of them included that services should not last for more than an hour or even have more than 100 congregants. Therefore, there have been a lot of conversations, especially after the Interfaith Council met and said that the places of worship can begin reopening Tuesday this coming week. So the question is, are the places of worship ready to reopen? Tonight we speak with the chairperson for the Interfaith Council, Bishop Anthony Muheria is in the house tonight to just tell us some of the guidelines and some of the rules they will be applying, and whether churches, mosques and other places of worship are ready to reopen beginning Tuesday, as they announced on Tuesday this week, a day after the head of state ordered the phased reopening of places of worship. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on Channel 1 Weekend. My name is Purity Museo. It is the 10th of July 2020. Glad to have you join us. And the world continues to grapple with increasing cases of coronavirus. As we speak globally, more than 12.2 million people have been infected by the virus, and over 500,000 have also lost their lives. And in Kenya, the Ministry of Health officials are in the coastal city, and in the last 2 days we have been recording the highest number of coronavirus, just a day after the country recorded over 400 cases. Today, the last 24 hours, the Ministry of Health also announced an additional 473 cases of coronavirus from a total sample of 6,979, recoveries 76. But unfortunately, also today the country recorded the highest number of fatalities. It is also the first time, or it is also the day that the country recorded a death from a frontline health worker. Medical practitioner lost their lives due to COVID-19. Let's get the cumulative samples. So far, the country has tested 206,584 samples, and confirmed cases as of now 9,448, recoveries 2,733, and the number of people who've lost their lives from this virus 181. And of course, even as the country reopened, reopening of this country, the Minister of Health is still calling on Kenyans to adhere to these guidelines provided on COVID-19 prevention. And Health CS Mutahi Kagwe really emphasizing that the country was not reopened because we are out, or the cases are reducing, but it was owing to the hurting economy. We have details of that and much more. Do interact with us at Purity_Museo and at KBC Channel 1 News. Let's first have a look at the highlights.
A total of 473 people have tested positive to coronavirus disease.
Another new daily high as 473 people test positive for COVID-19 on Friday.
To expect us to give money as capitation when the children are not there is not reasonable.
Teachers employed by BOGs to lose pay as government suspends capitation fees for terms 2 and 3. And long-distance PSVs hike fares in anticipation of up-country traveling with the lockdown lifted. Thank you so much for choosing Channel 1 for your latest news updates this night. I'm Purity Museo, and Simon Karodha is our sign language interpreter tonight. Tell us where you're watching us from. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. You can also stream live. Let's now get started. And 8 more people have died from COVID-19 in the country, the highest number of fatalities in a single day, raising the death toll to 181. Health CS Mutahi Kagwe said one of those who succumbed to the virus was a medical doctor, Kenya's first case of a healthcare provider. During the same period, 473 new infections were reported. This also being the highest number of cases to be recorded within 24 hours, and again raising the country's caseload to 9,448. The development coming as the Minister of Health opted for home-based care as a cheaper way of managing COVID-19 patients.
We have today, for the first time, lost a medical doctor to the coronavirus disease. I'm deeply saddened by this, particularly so because she contracted the virus while working to save lives of others who had contracted the virus.
Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe would ask for a minute of silence in honor of a fallen soldier in the fight against coronavirus. The death of Dr. Doreen Adisa Lugaliki to COVID-19 on Friday is Kenya's first death of a medical doctor.
It is always painful when life is lost, but even more painful when it is a front-line worker, and more so when it comes on the line of duty.
76 more patients have, however, been discharged, raising the total number of recoveries to 2,734. Health CS Mutahi Kagwe, who was in Kilifi to assess their COVID-19 preparedness, further revealed that 473 more people have tested positive for coronavirus in the last 24 hours, bringing the total to 9,448.
Our numbers of those who have tested positive have continued to rise above what we recorded yesterday. Out of a sample of 6,979, nearly 7,000, a total of 473 people have tested positive to coronavirus disease.
Kwa sasa tangu tupate kisa cha kwanza, kaunti ya Kilifi imeandikisha visa 71 kwa jumla kutoka mwanzo mpaka hivi leo tunaposimama hapa. Kati ya visa vile 71, watu 61 wamepata fueni na wamerudi majumbani.
Acting Director General in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Patrick Amoth, on his part, emphasized on the need for Kenyans to embrace home-based care owing to the cost of managing COVID-19 patients, a responsibility left to the national government.
The cost of management of somebody who tests positive for COVID, who is basically asymptomatic per day, is about 21,300 Kenya shillings. If you have a mild form of the disease with mild symptoms, maybe a mild cough, or just slight difficulty in breathing, then that puts you at 21,400 shillings per day. If you have a severe form of COVID, in which case you require supplemental oxygen, that figure jumps to 51,000 shillings per day. And if you require ICU critical care support, including intubation and ventilator support, the figure goes to 71,000 per day.
The number of new infections in the country has been steadily rising, with 42 out of 47 counties reporting cases in their regions. Nairobi leads with 5,188, followed by Mombasa County that has 1,720 coronavirus cases. Purity Museo, Channel 1 News. And the government says it will not release capitation funds to schools during this COVID-19 pandemic, dampening hopes of teachers employed by the Board of Management receiving their pay. Speaking during a fact-finding mission for technical colleges in the North Rift region, Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha called on parents, mainly with children in private schools, to be magnanimous in supporting their teachers, saying the government will not step in.
To teachers employed by Board of Management after the revelation from the Ministry of Education that it will not release capitation funds to schools.
If, because of a calamity that you have just mentioned, the head teacher used the money for something else, he should then engage the PTA and explain to them. So it is a give and take situation, isn't it? So to expect us to give money as capitation when the children are not there is not reasonable. We'll work through this with the PS and the Treasury to find out, because we are going to need a lot of money to prepare the schools for the time that they are going to open.
Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha, in the meantime, called on parents of children in private schools to support their teachers, saying the government has no funds.
For example, it is true that the schools have to be maintained. It is also true that we have some other non-teaching staff that maybe are not on the payroll of government. So you can engage to say, if you are going to release money, it should be released for specific purposes, isn't it? You can't talk about capitation. Just like I said, those who paid school fees in advance for second term, if you are in public schools, the money should be refunded.
On the coronavirus pandemic, Magoha said all tertiary institutions must meet all the stipulated protocols before they are reopened in September to curb the spread of COVID-19.
And our hope is that once this disease has affected so many people, maybe from 60 to 80%, then it will just be like any other disease. Because our bodies would have learned it, we should have built host immunity.
He further instructed the management to mark where students will be seated in class, all halls in accordance to the 1 meter distance rule.
When that stage comes, Ndugu, and we are praying it comes, the issue of social distancing may not be as important as it is now. I think that's our prayer. Now, nobody knows anything about this virus, and we just have to wait and see.
The CS who toured Tambaj Teachers Training College in Elgeyo Marakwet and Mosorio Teachers Training College in Nandi County said that all institutions must have automatic hand sanitizers and water points. The ministry, Magoha said, will inspect all 34 teachers training colleges and other tertiary institutions before the September opening date.
Elsewhere, 7 people have been reported dead in separate road accidents in Machakos and Kitui counties. 5 of the victims died in a road crash involving 2 14-seater matatus and a lorry in Kingatuini area along the Machakos-Kitui Road. The other 2 died in an accident along the Thika Mwingi-Garissa Road.
5 people died on Thursday night in a road accident involving a 14-seater matatu and a lorry in Kingatuani area on the Machakos-Kitui Road. 5 others sustained injuries and were taken to Machakos Level 5 Referral Hospital. According to witnesses, the driver of the lorry lost control of the vehicle, hitting the matatu, said to have been speeding.
Nimefika hapa nikamwambia tuache, nasikia tu nilale hapa nyuma. Sasa ile kulala nyuma nikasikia gari imetoa sauti kubwa sana, hata sikuelewa tokapo vile imeendelea.
Those injured were rushed to Machakos Level 5 Referral Hospital, where they are said to be in stable condition.
Some had fractures after the X-rays. Then they were attended to. Plaster of Paris was applied and discharged home. In the morning, we only found 2 victims, whereby one went into theater for an operation, but he is doing well.
Separately, 2 people died on the spot after they were involved in an accident at Kanginga area along the Thika Mwingi Garissa Road, 3 kilometers from Mwingi town in Kitui County. According to Mwingi Sub-County Deputy Police Commander Nicholas Mtua, the victims were pedestrians. The 2 were hit by a private vehicle.
Lakini hatujapata chanzo ya kilichosababisha ajali, lakini tunaelewa ya kwamba ilikuwa maybe ni uendeshaji mbaya wa magari, hasa wakati hii ambaye kuna curfew, uendeshaji ambaye sasa watu wanaendesha gari bila kuzingatia kuendesha gari mwendo wa kasi sana.
The Mwingi police boss has warned drivers against speeding during this period when the government has lifted cessation of movements in the country. Elsewhere, 2 people were seriously injured in an accident that involved a lorry and a personal car at the border of Embu and Kirinyaga counties. The 2 are being treated at Embu Hospital. Irene Mchuma Odim, Channel 1.
And Stephen Okwiri, you're watching from P Hill. I don't know where that is. Thank you so much for tuning in. Otieno Evans is also watching Channel 1 Weekend. Diana Catherine, you're saying that you're watching from Machakos. You're grateful to be with you today. Thank you. And then Ferez Kemunto, you're saying that places of worship should be opened but with minimal congregation as they follow government directive to help fight COVID-19. Keep talking to us. Tonight in studio is Bishop Anthony Muheria, who is the chairperson for the Interfaith Council, just to tell us the kind of preparations they are doing ahead of the reopening as they announced, which is expected to be Tuesday next week. The National Environment Tribunal has dismissed an application by National Environment Management Authority objecting an appeal by various lobby groups to stop the construction of the Nairobi Express Highway. The tribunal on Friday dismissed the preliminary objection by NEMA that was seeking to strike out the appeal, arguing that it had been filed out of time.
In the case, Greenbelt Movement, Wangari Maathai Foundation, Dandora Community Justice Center, Natural Justice and Katiba Institute had appealed the decision made by NEMA on April 2nd, issuing a license for the construction of the Nairobi Express Highway. The lobby groups had argued that the said highway has serious effect to the environment. Katiba Institute argued that filing of the appeal on June 2nd had triggered an automatic stay of the project as a matter of law by Section 129, subsection 4 of the Act, but NEMA disregarded the law. The license was issued to China Road and Bridge Corporation for the construction of the road which stretches from the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport all the way to Westlands. Meanwhile, the Directorate of Criminal Investigation says it will release 2 vehicles belonging to former Sports Cabinet Secretary Rashid Echesa. The Director, Legal and Crime Affairs at the DCI on Friday told the Kiambu Court that the DCI has no intention of holding the vehicles further since they are finished with investigations and are not involved in any active investigations against the former Cabinet Secretary.
What is it that has taken so long to comply with these orders, especially in light of the fact that the IO indicated, that's the investigating officer, that he had completed his investigations, and he said exactly what you have said before me today, that he had no need for these 2 vehicles being wherever they are right now.
It will be in form of an affidavit, of which the right person to swear that affidavit is the officer who handled the matter, not I as the representative of the DCI who is responding to this summons.
Echesa had in June moved to court seeking to have the vehicles released to him, citing challenges in the public transport sector amid the coronavirus pandemic. Elsewhere, a court in Kirinyaga has ordered the detention of a man accused of being behind an alleged scheme to frame Kirinyaga Deputy Governor Peter Ndambiri with corruption. Michael Mochodzi is accused of being the mastermind of allegations that Ndambiri misappropriated 138 million shillings meant for e-learning.
Even as people are now expected to be traveling up country, are the public service operators really complying to the guidelines on coronavirus? We have details of that and much more. Let's now take our first commercial break. Don't go too far.
When the world changed, it made us go back to the simple joys and love the little things even more, like serving up your best, eating together, and sharing more. Now, we'll take nothing for granted and always remember to taste the simple joys. Coca-Cola. Taste the simple joys.
Mimi sijapotea. Niko tu hapa. Mimi niko hapa kwa kuna tu mimi niko nakuja. Don't mind. Wacha hata usikate simu yako. Mimi ndio hii nimefika, hata angalia
kupata baba anakuja. Bonyeza star 811 star 962 hash. Bonyeza star 811 star 962 hash.
Next on.
Ngoja niulize jamaa, nani hapa hivi amepimwa hivi majuzi?
Para kwa Mwangi, si ni 10 bob.
Sijasema kupimwa weight. Saa hizi kupimwa HIV ni haraka na ni bure.
Pasile kuichukua akanipiga nayo ya uso.
Hariri huyu.
Sitaki vitu vagaba na mimi na
Nikimwacha mama alikuwa mzima kabisa. Nini lifanyika?
Sikiza Hariri. Sasa mimi nakwambia, mimi sasa hivi natoka hospitali. Kwa hiyo mimi sijui lilotokea hapo katikati.
Uko na HIV si eti ni mwisho.
Wewe uko nayo?
Mimi nilishapima.
Afya bora, maisha bora. Jipime, jiinue.
Please don't tell me you shaved off my eyebrows.
You're the one.
Can I take you somewhere?
You are so going on a date with Will Trainer. It's too booby. Get the red dress out.
I don't want to go in yet. I just want to be a man who's been to a concert with a girl in a red dress. A few minutes more.
Loving can heal.
I promised my parents 6 months, and that's what I've given them.
But that was before me.
I want him to live, but only if he wants to live.
I can't just let this happen.
You can't change who people are.
Then what can you do?
You love them.
And if you hurt me,
I don't want you to miss all the things that someone else could give you.
I can make you happy. I have become a whole new person because of you.
Do you know something, Clark? You are pretty much the only thing that makes me want to get up in the morning.
Wait for me to come.
Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Channel 1 Weekend. Simon Karodha is our sign language interpreter. A number of public service vehicle operators in Nairobi County have already taken advantage of the easing of movement restrictions by the government to hike fares as they anticipate a high number of passengers who will be traveling out of the capital. A spot check by KBC Channel 1, however, revealed that many operators are yet to comply with set guidelines from the Minister of Health and that of Transport.
Days after the government conditionally lifted the ban of movement in and out of Nairobi, Mombasa and Mandera counties, the transport sector is slowly resuming its services. A spot check by KBC Channel 1 in Nairobi revealed majority of public service vehicle operators are yet to comply with the mandatory COVID-19 certification from the Ministries of Health and Transport.
Wakati wowote sisi tutafungua na tutaambia abiria wetu waje, alafu tuanze safari ya kwenda sehemu mbalimbali.
The government said that we should have clearance forms. We don't know where to get those forms. We've been to agency offices. They are saying they are not yet ready. There are some here they have. I don't know where they are getting them. So I'm appealing to the government. This document to be made public and measures put in place of how we can access them, all of us.
In many of the terminals that we visited, passengers who were eager to travel out of the capital were turned away by the hike in fare prices.
Fare, I would say it has doubled. Yes, because regularly it's 1,000 shillings. Now we are doing 2,000 shillings. Just to cover up for the seats we are losing.
Nimeona magari ni chache,
Na nimeamua sasa labda nikuje kesho asubuhi juu nimeambiwa saa hii ni 2,200, lakini mwenyewe ameniambia kesho nikuje na 2,000.
Sasa unaona magazeti za kwanza zimeenda leo Friday, haijakuwa rahisi. Ndio mambo sasa, mambo ma conductors, drivers wapate hizo certificates, alafu tu comply mambo ya magari ya abiria wangapi, tujaribu pia kureadjust nini viti zetu ziwe sawa. Na mambo kama pia yamechukua muda.
A number of travelers who say they had been trapped in Nairobi for 3 months because of the lockdown were forced to use private cars.
Zinaenda nyumbani ni private cars ambapo tunalipisha 2,000, kama kwenda Kisii, Migori, Busia ni 2,000. Hatuchache excess side ya 2,000.
The PSV operators are supposed to have thermometer guns to check body temperature of passengers and provide sanitizers. The drivers must also be tested for COVID-19 and operate at 60% occupancy, among other requirements. Ben Chumba, reporting for Channel 1 News.
And calls to have sexual reproductive health education fully adopted into a broader community perspective continue to gain momentum amid concerns of increased teenage pregnancies. An online survey by a group of youth dubbed Sauti Sasa campaign under Amref Health Africa indicates that majority of youth and teenagers want sexuality education owned by a wider realm of community stakeholders, including guardians, older peers, and religious leaders.
The youth group has echoed its voice in the spiking teenage pregnancy cases across the country. They are now calling for meaningful engagement in finding effective solutions that teenagers can respond to.
Every day, 948 girls get pregnant. Every day. And of this, we're talking about around 13,000 girls who drop out of school every year because of teenage pregnancies. As such, today we are called upon to recognize that this is really an issue for the youth.
They claim previous interventions into curbing the menace have had little improvement as the affected group continues to suffer.
Issues like peer pressure, we have issues like being in the informal settlement. You ask for something in this duration kwanza ya COVID, and then your mom tells you sina, and your friends are getting it. It's easier for you to go to your boyfriend and get it at an easy cost of just having sex. So those are the things that are happening, and we will want to ask everyone to just be frank and any information on sexual reproductive health, may we call it the way it is.
As young girls, it's not that we want to be pregnant, it's just that we are not taught on the ways in which we can make ourselves be protected.
The group, which has now embarked on a campaign to ensure the voices of the young people are heard in dealing with the vice, are pushing for comprehensive sex health education
and promote ownership among parents, guardians, religious leaders and older peers by orienting them and spread the message of sexual responsibility among adolescents.
But as the youth come into terms with the harsh reality affecting the group in the society, several voices and concerns have been raised over the increasing numbers of teenage pregnancies.
We will do the best we can to teach, but also parents, you have a responsibility. Therefore, Kenyans are looking forward to hearing less in terms of teenage pregnancies during this pandemic and other social ills which are associated with juveniles committing offenses.
FIDA Kenya has in the meantime expressed its concerns over rising cases in sexual and gender-based violence, stating that most SGBV survivors do not seek immediate help for fear of stigmatization or lack of information on how to go about seeking justice. Kamche Menza for Channel 1 News.
So it is a joy of every family to have children, especially after a long struggle with infertility, and a couple in Githurai, Nairobi County, is celebrating the delivery of triplets after a 21-year-long struggle with infertility. Florence McKenna, aged 49, and her 57-year-old husband, John Gitobu, were blessed with 3 sons 3 months ago. But even as the joy of the fruits of the womb fills their house, On the financial front, things are seemingly thick for the first-time parents who say the COVID-19 pandemic has adversely affected their only source of income. Kamcha Menza returns with that report.
The sights and sounds of new life is what is currently filling up the home of Florence McKenna and John Gitobu. The cry of a baby is a sound the couple had longed for and dreamt of for the last 21 years. Smiles on their faces, evidence of the joy within.
Baada ya miaka hiyo 21, Mungu ndiye amekuja akanibariki, akanionekania, nikapata mimba, nikafanikiwa nikazaa watoto 3.
But Florence cannot forget the trauma she had to endure over the years. After visiting different hospitals, theirs is a story of optimism and patience.
Nikapata mimba ya kwanza, ikawa ya mkia, nikaenda operation, nikatolewa, nikakaa miaka ingine kama 3, nikaanza sasa kuona hapa sina matumaini.
Hospitali mengi tumetumia hela nyingi mpaka hata ashina ambao tulikuwa kitu ambacho tulikuwa nacho kikaisa. Kama saa hii tunadaiwa zaidi ya 300,000. Ukiangalia hiyo hali inakuwa ni hali ngumu. Kazi mwingine unashindwa kulala.
The triplets, all boys, were conceived and delivered at an age when many women would have long lost hope.
Sikutarajia kitu kama hii. Hii ni miujiza, na ndio maana nikaita mtoto wangu Miracle ndiye asimamia hao wengine. Mwingine nimemuita Emmanuel, Mungu yako pamoja nasi. Na huyo mwingine anaitwa Junior.
Florence and John, while elated by their new status, are however worried of their financial health.
Mimi ni mfanyabiashara mdogo wa njua kali. Mara nilikuwa naenda Uganda, nilikuwa naenda Tanzania, ndio huwa nilikuwa nauza, lakini kulingana na mwaka huu wote, hata kabla corona ilipotajwa China, kulianza watu walisti hakuna kitu nafanya.
Anyone willing to support the couple can channel their support through Equity Bank account number 071019294086 or M-Pesa numbers 0724320100 Florence McKenna and 0724293797 John Gitobu. Kamcha Menza for Channel 1 News.
Nairobi City has experienced a tremendous transformation in water provision as part of the war against the spread of coronavirus.
Tangu hii tangi letu hapa nyuma yangu nimefaidika sana.
93 boreholes in 3 months.
We had quick interventions.
We had water drilled, sunk, running out in a record 2 weeks.
We have over 14 million liters per day that has been brought into the informal settlements.
Find out what this means to livelihoods and the war against the COVID-19 pandemic. A Chams Media production this Sunday at 6 p.m. on KBC.
Welcome back. Let's now have our conversation about the readiness of places of worship ahead of the phased reopening beginning Tuesday next week, if what the chairperson for the Interfaith Council, Bishop Anthony Muheria, said or announced on Tuesday is anything to go by. And he is here in the house. Bishop Anthony, thank you so much for making time for us. Karibu sana to the show. And it's a very important conversation because you announced on Tuesday that places of worship will begin reopening on Tuesday. Maybe you can tell us what you meant by that. Does it mean that now, from where you sit, all places of worship are ready, or they have approved to be ready to adhere to these guidelines provided by the Ministry of Health, and also the ones that were announced by the head of state on Monday?
Yes, as you recall, the head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta, appointed the Interfaith Council, which was meant to study, and in studying propose a way of safe reopening of our churches, or our places of worship, mosques, temples, and all places where we unite to pray. And that team has been working for a long time. It has studied very many suggestions of over 800 religious leaders of this country, plus other suggestions and submissions. And after all that study, it was obvious that on one hand, there was a great desire for people to go back to their places of public worship. But on the other hand, the danger of the rising cases and still the spread of the virus is still looming and is real. So there was a balance. And that's when the president lifted those restrictions and also gave the Interfaith Council the mandate to determine when and how this phase reopening will be done. Prior to the announcement, we already had submitted to His Excellency the President our suggestions of the phased reopening.
Yes.
The first phase, of course, we thought was due at this time. We felt it could be something more contained. And that's why we said within 7 days, the churches could start, once they have looked into the compliance of the minimum that we have asked of those churches, they can start thinking about reopening. So I think it is one wish and an incentive for every single place of worship, church, mosque, temple, to be prepared within this at least 7 days. And I think many have started
and you'll
the
be telling
preparation.
us what this preparation is all about. But before the head of state announced the extension of these restrictions, that was on 6th of June, he mandated the council, especially to come up with protocols on how you think you can reopen. So on the 6th, that was on Monday, he said that he's announcing just a few of them.
Yes,
and
indeed.
we heard him talk about just 100 members, services not going for more than 1 hour. Maybe you can tell us details of what these protocols, because he said this is just a few, is what the head of state said and what of course people are complaining about all there is in your recommendations, or do we have much more?
Yes, indeed, the recommendations are very expansive.
Yes.
And in fact, the president said but a few, just to mention some of those things. The guidelines, which we are calling those protocols and guidelines, we prefer to call them guidelines, that we have proposed, are not complicated. They consist of 5 phases. They're what we call the pre-opening phase, the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then the final phase 4, which goes back to normality. So, and the idea is we are going to speak about this. We are going out to the counties to try and explain first to the religious leaders, and that's the work that we have coming week. So we're going to go and try to publicize and to make the people familiar with what are the contents of the whole cycle.
We are going to start with phase 1?
Right now we have given in the statement we made on Tuesday, the Interfaith Council, which I am chairing, and therefore it was the Interfaith Council which announced that the first phase, which will be the pre-opening phase, not phase 1, but the pre-opening phase, will start coming Tuesday. What really that means is that many churches or mosques will open soon after. You realize on Friday will be when the mosques ordinarily have their main prayers. On Saturday, the SDAs, and on Sundays, the Christian churches. But there are also the Hindus who also meet in other days. And the daily meeting for public worship will also be provided that those places of worship have been duly prepared. So it was we needed a space so that people are ready to prepare. But even this phase, which we are calling the pre-opening phase, is quite restrictive, precisely in order that we can start getting accustomed to how we are going to open, and also in view of the situations that we find ourselves in. So as I said, these are for the places of public worship. There will be those pre-opening phase 1, phase 2, and the latitude with which those places or the public worship will take place will go expanding on each phase. And in all this, as you said, we can go to that later, there are the conditions, and they are basically following the proposals. We received very many expert advice. We listened and learned a lot from experts, from modeling, from Ministry of Health, from the support of Ministry of Interior, which made us aware of the real dangers. And also we weighed now, according to that advice, what would be prudent. Because on one hand, we would like the people, of course, to go back to places of worship, but we do not want in any way to endanger their lives or have this be the cause of maybe an upsurge of the infections.
All right. And as of Tuesday, we will be, of course, seeing some places of worship reopen. What are the conditions? What are you looking at? What are some of the advice that you've, the conditions you've laid bare that unless we've seen this in all places of worship, then if you are a pastor, your church cannot open, really?
Well, I would like to underline that, and that the President did. The most important point here is that responsibility. The responsibility is individual responsibility and community responsibility. We are urging self-regulation. We are not going to follow from close by saying, are you following directly? There will be teams, there will be interfaith committees at various levels that will oversee in order to advise and to make sure that the people at least feel the moral obligation to follow. But the conditions that we have placed, or better, the guidelines, the touch lines upon which the reopening of places of public worship are going to follow are various. In fact, the report we submitted is a 36-page report, so it's quite long. But basically, the first basic conditions and requirements are first and foremost that there must be places of sanitation, of hand washing or sanitizer, so that every single congregant who comes to that place of public worship is able to sanitize, wash their hands before and after the ceremony. The second is regarding the use of masks, that every single congregant who comes to the place of worship must have their masks and maintain that mask worn throughout the time of that public worship. And that mask worn covering the nose and covering the mouth as it should be properly. The third is that there must be social distance of 1.5 meters to avoid any cross-infection between one another. These are demands, these are the indications already received from Ministry of Health, which we are putting into effect. The fourth, in this first phase especially, we have asked that the elderly above 58 and those who are under 13 will, for this time, be encouraged to stay at home. And that will be working with a more healthy sector of our congregants, which will be then easier to contain even any infection. The adverse effects of the infection will most probably be easily containable than if we had elderly people, more elderly people in the congregants. And finally, a cap that no matter how big the church is, if the church may even have more space at the 1.5 meter spacing to accommodate more than 100, for this first pre-opening phase, we are requiring and asking that they should have only 100 people participating in that public worship.
All right. And before we get to the questions being raised and concerns from these guidelines, especially on the age factor, let's talk about the weather, because places of worship, they have different modes of worship.
Yes.
Really. And we for some places they are singing, they are dancing, and you imagine someone putting on their masks. There is the issue of breathing, and also the order of service. Some places are used to taking more than an hour. And so do we have an ideal order of service, or it's as per every religious leader to see how they are going to reorganize their services?
The Interfaith Council, thanks be to God, is made up of people from all kinds, all the walks of faith traditions. And so we have actually debated and discussed so as to understand each one of those faith traditions, what are their main requirements and what normally happens within their place of public worship. And it is this that we have come with a proposal that cuts across all faith traditions, where with these particular characteristics, we know we are safeguarding the health and obviously not endangering our congregants. However, we do not try to prescribe any faith tradition what they should do. It is not our role, and I think it would be presumptuous of us to say you can do this, you cannot do this. But we give general instructions and general guidelines, and those guidelines have been very well received by the umbrella bodies of those faith traditions, and they are actually implementing and putting it now in the accommodation of the way they celebrate or the way they pray or the way they worship God. And it is up to them to see how these general guidelines we've given can be accommodated within their way of worship. But we still require that those, much as we know it is a demand, a very stringent demand, that they accommodate even to the timings, they accommodate to the way of worship, so that they have in the back of their mind safety of the congregants.
All right. I'm sure you've received complaints such as the 58-year-olds being locked out of services, and some of them actually claiming to be the leaders in different places of worship, and also missing out on the spiritual nourishment. We're also talking about the young people, 13-year-olds and below, are not supposed to attend services. Again, questions on their morals. You know, this is where they get moral guidance from the church leaders. How are we addressing that? And the head of state was very categorical that this one should not, for now, attend services.
I think, again, what the president said very much goes together with the advice from the Interfaith Council, that for the time being, remember, we are in just the pre-opening stage. We want to start off with a group that we will be a bit secure and the risks will be lower. As we go ahead, of course, we will try to accommodate those older ones even within the worship as we go through the phases. So it is a question first that we want and wish that all the religious leaders take to heart, and all believers, wherever they are, to comply with the general requirements. And once we have this going well, once we have the habit of following those guidelines clearly, then those older ones joining will be in less danger. So I think it's first important to see that we are setting the stage. That's why you're calling it pre-opening. We are setting the stage. And we want to set the stage with the safest module that we can have. And that's why we're having that.
Right.
So they shouldn't be worried that they won't come. They very soon, God willing, we'll have them with us. But as well, the innovation of each congregation should find ways of reaching out to them and serving them and communicating and trying to uplift them in various means. The same happens with the younger ones who will not be able to be there. We must find new innovative ways for this phase as we are, so as to accommodate and reach out to them.
All right. We are short of time. We are winding up. But not before I ask you, some of these are saying they are, let's assume they are the leaders in their respective places of worship.
Yes.
Let's say a pastor is over 58 years old and he is, you know, the one leading this particular church, and that applies to other places of worship. What happens?
I think we've left that to the superiors, the people who are the ones overseeing those particular pastors, to make the prudent decision. One, don't endanger the life of the pastor. If there is a possibility of having someone else take that role, very well, let him do so. But if not, and you see prudential, use all the prudence. And in this case, you will have that using all the needs that are there. But again, I want to just say, remember what we want to tell everyone: let's pray for the end of this pandemic. And let's be very, very responsible. It is now my responsibility to be my brothers and sisters' keeper, even in those places of worship.
All right, and Amos says we have to wind up. In 30 seconds, from where you sit, sir, are places of worship ready to reopen come Tuesday? In
30 seconds, I think by and large, yes. By and large, they are going to pass the average pass, but we are going to improve day by day. Right. The challenge are the places where the resources are short. And so we are calling upon the county governments and the national government to assist those small mosques, churches, or places of worship which may need a boost for a tank, for water, and for some other minimal things that I think well-wishers, government and county governments can come in very handy. But I can say in a score of 1 to 10, I would say will be around 6 or 7.
6. All right. We'll be seeing, and of course, we'll see how that pans out come Tuesday. We'll be monitoring how prepared places of worship are. Bishop Anthony Muheria, thank you so much for your time, elaborating on especially how we should be reopening places of worship. We thank you for your time.
God bless you.
All right, and thank you so much for watching. We are taking a short commercial break. Don't go too far. We still have much more news, including business and sports. Stay with us.
Who choose to read their Bible daily, they become wiser and they become stronger than the people who don't read their Bibles. So when you choose hard, difficult things, you become a natural leader. He brings us to church to introduce to us another higher level of relationship that is called a faith relationship. You are also a solution to somebody else's problem. You cannot be the only problem all the time.
Join Pastor Jimmy Masharia on The Master's Touch this Sunday from 8 a.m. on KBC Channel 1.
On the next episode of Behind Closed Doors.
I came to feed you and give you an update on current events. How are my kids doing? Your kids? Your kids are just fine. It's your sweetheart Gonzalo that isn't doing so well.
Renato Conde is dead.
But what are you saying, sir?
He's dead. He is dead.
Where is he? How do you know?
He's there. He's in Ignacio's studio.
It is now time for business news. The Kenya Aviation Workers Union is seeking to stop the planned retrenchment exercise by Kenya Airways. The Secretary General Mos Ndiema says the downsizing is in bad faith since the employees had previously agreed to take huge pay cuts after negotiations with management of Kenya Airways to avert job losses.
In a memo last Friday, Kenya Airways notified employees of plans to start a staff downsizing exercise from September, blaming the latest retrenchment to reduced operations as a result of COVID-19 pandemic that has affected air travel. The Kenya Aviation Workers Union has voted to halt the retrenchment exercise until the airline reaches agreeable terms with affected workers.
The Kenya Aviation Workers Union, we have gone to court with the sole purpose of obtaining orders to stop staff rationalization. We are also seeking orders to stop Kenya Airways from occasioning job losses to our members, or rather terminating employment of any of our members on account of staff rationalization.
The Union Secretary General Mos Ndiema says the retrenchment exercise is in bad taste, as the workers and the management of Kenya Airways had not so long ago agreed to pay cuts of up to 75% to avoid job losses.
Our members and the rest of KQ employees, even those who are not our members, were earning a paltry 25% of their gross pay. It was later on enhanced to 35%. And we did this with the sole purpose of trying to support the airline.
Ndiema wants the Kenya Airways management to exercise patience as flight passenger services resume next Wednesday. Benson Rioba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Farmers in Kitui County are seeking the government's support in funding and capacity building to help boost food production. The farmers say challenges such as climate change, rapidly growing population, invasion of pests, and water scarcity are affecting yields.
The combined effects of climate change and rapid population growth are increasing food insecurity, environmental degradation, and high poverty levels. In Kitui County, erratic weather patterns are negatively affecting farming activities. Farmers are calling for government support in capacity building and construction of irrigation projects to guarantee all year-round production. They are urging the government to cushion them against the effects of economic contraction occasioned by COVID-19, invasion of pests, and farm input support.
Serikali ya county government iwe inatutembelea kwa kutufundisha ili tuweze kusidi kupanda hizo watermelon, sababu watermelon nikipanda watermelon kwa wingi naweza pata pesa na inisaidie.
They believe supporting small-scale farmers is the only way to resolve Kenya's food insecurity.
Tunambahatisha tu kujaribu kupanda chakula just for the sake uone kama chakula itafaulu. Lakini hatuna ile elimu ya kujua ni chakula gani inatakiwa ipandwe hapa.
We are requesting the county government of Kitui County through its officials, that is through small scale, through the extension officers in the ground or in the grassroots level to come and visit farmers. Whereby in visiting farmers, they'll give information.
Betty Kiptum, Channel 1 Business.
And Kenya expects exports to the United States to increase by 2.5 times, 250 billion shillings by the year 2025. If the free trade agreement deal takes effect as anticipated, the Trade Cabinet Secretary Betty Maina is banking on the free trade agreements with the United States, the United Kingdom, and China to lift the value of exports to 2 trillion shillings annually.
Currently, Kenya exports goods worth 60 billion shillings annually to the US, with nuts, vegetables, and textile products forming the bulk of the shipments. In a bid to show up the export volumes, Kenya has started negotiations for a free trade agreement with the North American nation ahead of the 2025 expiry of the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA. Trade Cabinet Secretary Betty Maina says if sealed, the free trade agreement will give local manufacturers new markets in the US.
If you even increase our market share by 2%, of the things that we currently sell, or even 5%, the amount of potential in revenue, export revenue for the country is amazing.
She says there are plans to have similar trade negotiations with the UK after exiting the European Union, as well as China, which is expected to lift Kenya's value of export to 2 trillion shillings annually over the next 5 years.
Our estimation is if we increased our market presence to 5% of those same products, we would earn 2 trillion shillings in export revenue in no time.
Even as COVID-19 batters the economy, the government has been urged to keep the country's supply chain running to enable manufacturers access both local and international markets.
We've delayed the ACFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, from this month to now. It's in January 2021. So January, if it comes in and it's live, so we can trade whatever we manufacture here, we can trade with the rest of Africa.
The CS challenged local manufacturers to produce high-quality products that can compete globally. Benson Rigoba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Sifa za Bwana, jina la pekee kwetu ni Yesu. Walioshinda dhambi na mauti, tutakanyaga kwa utaratibu.
The Atlas Lions of Morocco came to Maula Harambee Stars at Kasarani.
That one.
But wine still tamed by the Fabish boys in the 2002 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier.
Certainly this match is John Mayorore playing that one's not into the area.
It's in the net. Harambee Stars takes the lead in the 4th minute of the game.
We reminisce this match this Saturday at 5 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 in our determination to showcase our soccer finest.
Let's now get the sport. Sports Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Amina Mohammed has said that a decision on whether to resume sporting activities in the country or not will be determined Monday next week after she receives a report from a task force that is working on the process. Amina revealed that as she officially launched an anti-doping agency of Kenya e-learning in Nairobi.
Sporting activities within the country were suspended since March when the outbreak of coronavirus was reported in Kenya. However, plans to resume the activities have been ongoing after Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Amina Mohammed appointed members of an advisory committee on resumption of the sporting activities. Amina has said that a final decision will be made next week after receiving a report from the committee. She was speaking during the launch of Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya ADAK e-learning that is geared towards enhancing the efforts of fighting doping in the country.
Expectation is we will resume some form of sport, right, as soon as it's announced by His Excellency the President. The report, the recommendations will be sent to him through the Ministry of Health. And I have said again that I said that to yesterday that we're very grateful to the Ministry of Health because they provided 2 senior officers who are sitting in the task force and are supporting us, just to make sure that we don't go back and forth, asking whether this is fine. You know, they're sitting with us throughout and making sure that the protocols are actually, kosher, that they are good protocols.
Realization of the fact that during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, we are not able to carry out the education programs that we normally have, the workshops, the outreach programs. Even we cannot access schools like we used to do. And so therefore, during that period, we thought of a way in which an innovation was introduced by that department. And we see it working very well. We see the people who have now already experimented, and tried to reach this platform. Many. They don't have to come to Nairobi. Our education officers don't need to travel up country to do the same. All you need is a tablet, a computer, or a smartphone.
The program targets sportsmen and women from the ages of 14, which becomes the first ever program to have been initiated in the African continent. Sportsmen and women will be required to sign up to access online training and tests in 3 different modules. Frederick Moki for Channel 1 Sports.
And that brings us to the end of our broadcast this Friday night. I will, in less than a minute, go through your feedback. KBC Channel 1 News Facebook page, Faith Memoka, you're watching live from Bomet County. Joshua Munyove, you're watching from Kitale. Matisi and Joka Sap, also you're saying you're watching Channel 1 Weekend. Westlands, Victor Mavigi, you're also watching Channel 1 Weekend. Still on our Facebook page. Otieno, you're saying that you are watching Channel 1 Weekend, and you're saying Monange Brian, you're saying that glad to be tuning in from Nyamira County. Talking of reopening of churches, pretty good, but lesser than an hour might be a challenge. And then Grace Atieno, you're also watching. And lastly, on our Twitter account, we had Josville Masika, you are tuned in, and you also have your comment in regard to the reopening of places of worship, and you're saying it's long overdue. Businesses and other activities have resumed, including political rallies. Why not places of worship? All right, Kevin, lastly, you are saying that you are watching Channel 1 Weekend, that at Kevin Mark. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching Channel 1 Weekend. It's been a cold day, and I will not leave the desk unless I ask, or until I ask Irene Muchuma Odim, who is coming up next, the daily weather forecast. Irene, when do we have the change of this weather? It's been so cold. My name is Purity Museo, and Simon Karodha has been our sign language interpreter. Do stay tuned for Irene with the latest weather forecast. Good night and God bless.
Good evening. I hope you're well. It has been a chilly day here in the capital. We're not expecting any changes for tomorrow, but then we'll have to keep warm for our own good. A very warm welcome to Channel 1 Weather Updates. My name is Irene Mchuma Odim. There is a possibility of light showers of a few places in the capital and central highlands tonight, the Lake Basin region and western parts of the country, equally to the northwestern parts of the country, will tonight experience showers accompanied by thunderstorms of a few places. This as the coastal strip will experience showers. The rest of the country will be covered with scattered clouds. In the capital, we'll wake up to a cloudy and sunny day tomorrow, though it will be a bit chilly. Similar weather conditions are expected in Meru and Nyeri. There will be showers in Malindi and Mombasa. Sunny conditions will prevail over the northeastern parts of the country, moving all the way to the southeastern lowlands. A few wet conditions will be experienced in Kakamega, Eldoret, and Kitale. The northwestern parts of the country will experience sunny conditions. In the afternoon, we'll see showers accompanied by thunderstorms coming in over the western parts of the country and the Lake Basin region. Areas to be affected include Kakamega, Eldoret, Kisii, also Narok and Nakuru. Showers will continue over the coastal strip after short sunny intervals. The northern parts of the country will mostly experience sunny conditions, similarly in the southeastern lowlands. Tonight's temperatures in the capital stand at 12 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, you'll experience maximum of 23 degrees Celsius. The highest temperatures across the country will be experienced in Lodwar at 35 degrees Celsius. Temperatures have slightly gone down in Mandera. Expect maximum of 34 degrees Celsius. That is our weather here in the home country. Let's now cross the borders and see how it will be in other parts of the world. Do have a good night and a splendid day ahead.
Beauty College.